Today I will be talking about a book series that I've been getting a lot of requests to review. Actually, it's probably the only unanimous thing I've ever gotten any requests to review. And that would be continuing reviewing the Drizzt books. Now, if you've been keeping with me at all, or seen any of my previous videos, you know that I've already reviewed these three books. These are the first three books in the Legend of Drizzt series. If you have not seen those, and have any questions about the Legend of Drizzt series, you don't know where to start, you don't know who Drizzt is, you want to learn more, I'm going to post a link right there, hopefully, to the first video where I talk about those. So you should go view that first if you don't have any misunderstandings about Drizzt, don't know who he is, anything like that. If you are up to date on that video, or just wanting to know more about Drizzt, whatever your reason for being here, I will be talking about the Icewind Dale Trilogy, which is the next three following these three. This is the introduction trilogy. It is a prologue explaining the character of Drizzt. This trilogy contains the Crystal Shard, Streams of Silver, and the Halfling's Gem. Now, these three books are actually the first three R.A. Salvatore ever wrote, at least in the Drizzt series. I'm not entirely certain if these are his first ever books, but I believe they might be. I'm fairly certain the Crystal Shard is actually his first book ever, but I'm not certain of that. Now, I have to say, the Crystal Shard is by far my favorite book in this entire series. In this series, the Drizzt series spans 13 books, just the original series, and there are even more after that. And so far, out of everything I've read, this one is my favorite. I absolutely loved the Crystal Shard. And this was actually his first written one, as I said. In this series, it is numbered as number 4, if you can see that there. And chronologically, this is the 4th book. However, you do not need to read the first 3 over here to be able to read this. Those are more of just prologues. They were written way after the fact. I'm not exactly sure when those were originally written. I'm not sure on the date, but they were written at a later date than this book was. This was 1988, I believe, when this book was first written. So you don't need to have read those at all. I would highly, highly recommend that you do, just because they do a wonderful job of setting the scene for this book and developing the character that is Drizzt. And just all around, it'll make this book more enjoyable, in my opinion, if you can go through those 3 first. But you do not have to, because this book was written first, and Drizzt is actually a support character in this book, not a main character, so you don't need to know about those. So if for whatever reason you can't find those 3, the first, second, or third at all, or you just don't want to for whatever reason, you can just pick this up and start the series here. You can go through the whole series without reading any of those. So, favorite book. That's a lot of what I have to say about this, is just how wonderful it really was. A lot of the characters introduced in the first 3 there, good characters, but none of them really stick around, save a few. Drizzt obviously sticks around, because he's kind of the star of the series, being that it is called the Legend of Drizzt. However, most of those characters introduced in there don't really stick around that much. This book will introduce a lot of new characters, wonderful characters in my opinion. I love all of the characters they introduced in this one. All of the support characters that come into play here are wonderful, very well written. I absolutely adore them all. They're great characters, and these ones are around to stay, at least for longer than any of them in the original 3. There weren't really many support characters around there. This one takes place in Icewind Dale, if you've been keeping up with the series so far. If not, Icewind Dale is the northern part of this world, and the hero Drizzt, a dark elf, who is ostracized by humanity for his black skin. The race of dark elves is considered evil by people, and they are all evil, more or less, except for Drizzt. Drizzt is a very good person, good elf. So when people see him, they automatically assume, you know, like, oh, you're a dark elf, we hate you because you're different than us and don't look good. So everyone just assumes he's evil, but he's not. And he travels to the north because he believes he can flee from persecution, find an easier time to fit in there. He knows of some towns there that will accept rogues and bandits and all kinds of unsavory characters, so he figures maybe he'll fit in there. It doesn't go quite as planned. He doesn't really fit in with the humans still. They're more accepting of him than anyone else has ever been so far, but he still does not have full acceptance, which is a lot about what this book will cover. in addition to introducing many new characters and beginning to develop them. Other than that, I'm not going to say too much, not going to reveal very much of the plot. You should read it for yourself. It's a beautiful book. One of my favorites ever, really. And that's what I have to say about the Crystal Shard. Following that one is Streams of Silver, which begins to speak of Drizzt's further travels. And these are going to get a little difficult to talk to without giving any spoilers, which I don't want to give away. But essentially, it's about Drizzt and Bruenor. You don't have to worry about who that is if you haven't read any of the books yet, but there's another character named Bruenor. Drizzt and Bruenor traveling down to an old dwarven kingdom to reclaim it, Mithril Halls. And this book is also one of the best. This is a wonderful book. I really remember loving this one. I can't really recount too much of the details of this one. I read this one when I was a lot younger and can't really remember all of it very well. Unfortunately, for some reason, just around this book, my memory is very hazy. But I do recall all the parts. I recall several parts, and I recall loving all of those parts very much. It was a very good book. The ending to this book, which I will not reveal, you have to read it yourself, was outstanding. I loved it. It was a great cliffhanger, and it really made you want to just keep going. I think that's so far true for both these books. One thing is that they never really make me want to stop reading. Through this entire series with these two books, I just wanted to keep going. There were like no parts where I just wanted to set this book down. It was one of those. You just couldn't set it down. And this trilogy, really in my opinion, including this third one here, which I'll get to in a second, is the best trilogy or series of books in the entire Drizzt series. I really absolutely love them. I couldn't stress more your need to read these ones. If you were just kind of, like average on the first three, you're kind of like them, you will like this trilogy much better, at least in my opinion. I hope you will, because I certainly did. Not that the first three were bad, because I thought they were fantastic, but these three were just outstanding. Also, one of the big things about this one is the introduction of another character, excuse me, antagonist, who's very popular, actually got his own series later, named Artemis, an assassin, essentially introduced into the story, that will stick around for many books, a fair amount of books, and then eventually later he gets his own series, which I'm currently have just started on, and that's a great series too, but I'll cover that another time. So this introduces another character to the series. In this one, the Halfling's Gem, my least favorite in the trilogy, but by no means does that mean it was bad. I would still give this one about an 8.5 or 9 out of 10, because it was still great. I absolutely loved this one, just like all the others. Compared to the first two in this trilogy, not quite as good. Still very good, though. And in this one, I really don't think I can tell you very much at all without giving a few spoilers. But essentially, it's about the band of heroes that is now assembled, Drizzt and Bruenor, Regis, a few others. Don't worry about who those people are if you haven't read yet. Just a group of the heroes, essentially, travels to Kalamport, which is one of my favorite cities introduced in this series. It is a beautifully written city, a city of thieves and scoundrels. It's just so well crafted, and there are a lot of parts, even though it's not my favorite one, there were some golden parts in this book that I just absolutely loved. And towards the end, like the last 3/4 of the book, some of the best writing I've read in my life. So, all in all, for this whole trilogy, I cannot stress enough how wonderful I thought these books are. I really hope people who read them share my opinion. From what I've heard, for the most part, most people agree that this original trilogy is the best part of the whole series. And I certainly feel that way. It was beautiful. I loved it. And I hope you will love it too. If you've already read the first three, or you've just started the first three, you better get reading so you can hurry up and get to these three. Because these three right here are, in my opinion, once again, the best in the series. In the future, I will be talking more about the rest of this series and how it all plays out, including chronology. It's not a word. Talking about the order of them. But for now, I just want you to know that you need to read these, because they are beautiful, especially if you love fantasy. Even if you don't love fantasy, as I've said before in my previous review for these videos, even if you don't love fantasy, if you're just kind of iffy with it, these books are great. They're a great introduction to fantasy. There's something really complex about them in terms of fantasy, and they've turned many non-fantasy lovers into fantasy lovers. They are beautiful books. All in all, for these three, I would probably give this trilogy